Hi, welcome to our kind of sneak preview of the essential divisional charts on Vargas, which will be starting with a class on September the 6th. My name is Barry Rosen. I assume sound is okay. Alice, is the sound coming through fine?
Yeah, I think I'm the only one. Yeah, it's fine.
No, there are other people on the attendees line. Yeah. Okay, great. I wanted to welcome you all. Many of you know me from Facebook or from my newsletter. I've been teaching Vedic astrology for over 10 years now. I speak at the major conferences, including the British Association of Vedic Astrology conferences, the Sedona Vedic Astrology conferences, the United Astrology conferences, the Parashara Astrology conferences online. So I've written 5 books on Vedic astrology. Some of you may or may not know that. And my favorite thing to do is to teach Vedic astrology, and I do it every Saturday. I've been doing that, for years. Probably have over 500 lectures in my library, and all those courses are available to purchase if you're interested. I've taught just about everything. Today we're going to get an overview of Vargas. We're going to learn some of the rules for Vargas. We'll have a couple examples. I'm expecting only to go about an hour and a half, maybe less. I usually lecture, and I will take questions toward the end. I can unmute you all, and you can ask questions live. And sometimes you can type questions into the chat or the question section, and sometimes I can field them and answer them. I don't take specific questions about your charts because I need to see your chart and study it in detail, and everything's out of context. So just know you can ask a question about the lecture, but I don't really feel I can handle a specific question about your chart. I stand on the shoulders of many great teachers, including Camilla Sutton, G.K. Goel, Hank Friedman, and Sanjay Roth, so a lot of their lectures and books are the basis for my material. My contact information is here. You probably know my website, appliedvedicastrology.com, and I'm also on Facebook and many other places. So you can email me at support@appliedvedicastrology.com. Okay. For those of you who don't know about my books, this is my last book. It's on Amazon. You can get a hard copy, or you can order a PDF from our website. And it's really got a lot of wonderful material on it. Okay, let's just start with some Vedic chanting. Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganapatiye Namaha, Om Ganapatiye Namaha, Om Ganapatiye Namaha, Vakritunda Mahakaya, Suryakoti Samaprapa, Nirvigyam Kurame Deva, Sarvakarisha Sarvada, Dhyanamulam Guru Murti, Pujamulam Guru Padam, Mantramulam Guru Padam, Mantramulam Guru Padam, Om Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotir Gamaya, Mrityoma Amritam Gamaya, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, so Vargas, which are also translated into divisional charts. I tend to use a lot of English words because sometimes the mind turns off when we hear Sanskrit words unless we're really fluent in that culture and language. And there are fancy names for each of the Vargas. We all know Navamsha and Dwadashamsha and things like that. But I tend to use the English name so that the brain doesn't turn off. The divisional charts give us more microscopic information. I mean, two people born in the same city with the same rising sign are very, very different. They have different family karma. They have different karma, and every minute things change. In fact, identical twins, born in the same hospital within minutes apart, have different charts, and that could be seen in the D60 chart, which is and that chart changes every 2 minutes. And if you are friends with any identical twins, you know they're often, yeah, they're similar in certain respects, but they're often different. And so charts, the divisional charts kind of give us more microscopic information. I kind of liken it to kind of reading strands of DNA, you know, and looking at karma very specifically. And we start out learning kind of basic things in Vedic astrology. The natal chart is very important, but when we want to get more microscopic for prediction and for really karmic tendencies, we need to go into the divisional charts. And again, this is the beginning of a whole year study on Vargas. This first course, which will start September 6th, is on what I call the essential Vargas. So we'll be looking, and I'll talk about what we'll be looking at. But there are many divisional charts, and they're all very exciting. And so I'm excited to kind of teach them. Again, I haven't taught this course since 2018, 2019. One of the things that we'll have to learn to use divisional charts is rectification. I have a number of rectification techniques that we'll learn, and I will probably teach you, and we may have, I usually do one lesson on rectification, which is a 2-hour lesson. I may do more. It's kind of a fun thing to deal with. Sometimes actually a second lesson on rectification might be more relevant after we've studied Vargas more, because what you eventually have to do, if you don't, sometimes you get a time within a half hour, or my mom says, I think I was born around 9 o'clock, and that's not very, reliable. Birth certificates, have been known to be off quite often. The nurses are more interested in getting the placenta out and making sure the baby's healthy than writing down the exact time. So most birth certificates are not even accurate, and I know studies that have been done on birth certificates even found that they were off on average a half hour sometimes. Which I don't think it's that true, but it's kind of fascinating. So divisional charts kind of change. Some change more often than others. For example, the D9, the Navamsha chart, and the Dashamsha chart, which are the most important ones that we end up using quite often, those change every 10 to 13 minutes. The D60 chart, which is a chart Parashara says that we can read alone, which we'll talk about that in a little bit, changes every 2 minutes. So eventually I can teach you some techniques that I've learned to kind of rectify the chart to the minute. So we'll have a lesson on rectification. Okay. So this is the second time I've taught this course, and over the years, I learn more, and I like teaching these courses the second time, and this is the 2.0 version, because I know a lot more than I did 10 years ago. I think about 8 years ago when I taught it. And it's actually good for me to, the nature of Vedic astrology is that if you don't continually use it, in my case, I teach it regularly so that it refreshes my mind. And so even those of you who've studied with me before, but you've taken that class before with me, there will be new material, and we all need to kind of refresh our brains around this stuff. So we'll go through all the Vargas over the next year. We'll show you how to kind of refine predictions using both Vimshotri Dasha and what are called the Rashi Dashas. There are other dashas besides Vimshotri Dasha. We'll teach a new lesson on divisional strength. The computers are all really good at kind of doing these divisional strength charts, Shadbala and all these things. And Parashara actually spent a lot of time kind of teaching you how to kind of calculate these things mathematical. And a lot of Vedic astrology is, you have to have a good K2 usually to be a Vedic astrologer, which K2 governs mathematics and Vedic astrology. Luckily, we have the computers, and they can spit out all kinds of wonderful data. And we'll sometimes it's kind of nice to just pull up a graph. You can pull up a graph of divisional strength, and you can see things that you might not see. So it's kind of fun to be able to use that. We'll also spend probably 2 lessons on the D60 chart, which isn't taught very much. Parashara says it's one of 3 charts that we can read by itself. So most divisional charts we're not supposed to read just by themselves. We have to read them in conjunction with the natal chart. However, the standalone charts are the D9, the Navamsha chart. We can read it by itself, and we can also read the D60 by itself. And the D60 it's really shows us all our karma from all our past lifetimes, and exactly what will manifest in this lifetime is something we can learn how to use. Course will run about 16 weeks through December. We'll have a Christmas break, and we'll start Vargas 2 in sometime in January. And I tend to, my favorite time for teaching is Saturdays from 11:30 to 1:30. I'm doing the preview today on Sunday just to, shake it up a little bit. If I had like 10 students who said I could only do it on Sunday, it's possible that I can switch my schedule around. I do financial research on Sundays, and so it's usually harder for me to kind of fit in a class and do that research, but I have done it before. So the main Vargas that we'll cover, of course, we'll spend a lot of time in the Navamsha chart, which there's so much material there. We'll probably have maybe even 6 lessons on Navamsha since it's so important. The Drekana, which is the D3 chart, there are 2 or 3 Drekana charts. They're often used to show, they're often used to study health, in Ayurvedic astrology, sexual vitality, and in our relationship with our siblings, which is, can be interesting. The D10 chart is the one that we tend to use a lot. Is for career status, career tendencies. I do use that one the most, along with the D9 chart. So we spend 3 lessons on the D10. We'll spend a couple lessons on the D60, which again contains the collective karma of all our lifetimes and shows our deepest patterns that we've inherited from past lives. And we'll have probably only 1 lesson on the D12, which is often about parents, but it's actually a really kind of it's like the D60. It's kind of like past life karma, and it tends not to get used enough. And in fact, I forget to use it enough, and I want to teach it again to kind of reinforce it. The D12 and the D60 kind of go together, so it's kind of interesting. In next year's Varga classes, we'll look at more specific things. The Varga for wealth. There's the D2 chart, which if you pull that up on your computer, it has all the planets in Cancer and Leo, and that's really an Ayurvedic chart. It governs your breath, your fire breath, and your cooling breath, the Nadi Pingala breath. And that's what that's about. But there are specific Hora charts that you have to calculate in different ways to look at money. We'll look at those next year, and we'll look at property, which is one that I do use a lot. D4, D7 for children. You don't get that many people asking about that anymore, although it does come up. And I usually recommend if somebody asks about a child to look at their birth chart. So but I do, if people want to know, will I have children, we have to go to the D7, and there's all kinds of rules that can usually be done quickly. The D16 chart is for vehicles. I rarely use that, but we'll go over it next year. D20 for spirituality, we'll have 2 or 3 lessons on next year. D30 is very important for mental health. Trimshamsha, it's really kind of how we think can affect our health, and that's one of the mental component of health. And the D24 for education. Anyway, the class runs about 16 weeks, and the early bird discount by the end of the month is $349, and you can email me if you need a special payment plan, although most people have credit cards and they can get a payment plan through their credit cards. So what can we do today? We can talk about kind of very simple rules, which we all need to know. If you're taking the course, this is a foundational material. One of the things, if you know about my classes, even the preview course is part of the course, because it's like the first day of college. You have to kind of know what you're going to do, but you have to learn kind of the core principles. And so we're going to learn a lot of those core principles today. So one of the things that we always look at first in a Vargas chart is the rising sign of the, first of all, we have to feel good about the birth time. And then, so we have to go through all our little rectification things. And then we look at the rising sign of all the Vargas charts and see where the Lord is placed. So that's the most important thing, is the rising sign in all the Vargas charts and where the Lord is. We don't really like the Lord of the Vargas chart in the 3rd, 6th, 8th, or 12th. Now the 3rd is sometimes a neutral house. Not really a neutral house if you really know it well. It's really a difficult house in the Rashi chart, but we don't like the Lord of the Vargas chart in the 6th, 8th, or the 12th house, because that kind of ruins that area. So if you look at your Dashamsha chart and the Lord of the 1st is in the 8th house or the 12th house, maybe there are a lot of career changes or ups and downs in careers all the time. So it tends to create a lot more karma. We also don't like to have malefics in the 1st house in the D10. I'm sorry, in the Vargas chart. So those are the two things that you're always quickly looking for: is the chart lord of a Vargas chart in 3, 6, 8, or 12 in that Vargas chart, and are there malefics in that Vargas chart? If you get those two things happening, then that person will have trouble in that area of their life. And so that's one of the things that we do. And then there are advanced rules that we have to look, which is this technique called Bhava Suchika. I call it transposition. It's one of those words that our mind Sanskrit words that turns our mind off. But how does the the planet move from the D1 to the D9, for example? So, for example, my Jupiter is in Gemini in my Rashi chart. In the Navamsha chart, it moves to Taurus. So it moves 12 signs and 12 houses from Gemini to Taurus. And whenever you get a 12 transposition from the D1 to a Vargas chart, you can get frustration. So in my Dasha periods, my Jupiter periods actually are kind of frustrating in many ways. There's a lot of karmic patterns that come out. So it's an important thing. We'll have probably a whole lesson on that. It's really a very, very important thing to study, and it's not known very much. But it's one of these hidden things, sometimes you quickly look at something and you say, oh, that's wonderful, and then you look at it with the Bhava Suchika technique, and it's not good. In fact, one of the examples I teach, there's an Indian, multi-billionaire of, a car company. And when you look at his chart, he's got something in the 12th house, which would, he was in a 12th house dasha, and you would think, oh my God, nothing's going to happen for him. And during this period, because the Bhava Suchika has a 9 transposition, he made his multi-millions. So, very kind of hidden things in that technique, which we'll have to spend a lesson on. There's always karakas, which are, I call them, in the English word, is signifier. Venus is the signifier for wife, Jupiter is the signifier for husband, Mars is the signifier for brothers. So in each of the Vargas charts, we always have to look at the key signifiers, the Vargas. So in the D9 chart, we're always looking at Venus for wife and Jupiter for husband, because those are the two most important planets to look at in the D9. In the D4 chart for home and property, we have to look at Mars for property. We can look at K2 actually for built-up property, and we can look at the moon for the mind and happiness also in the D4. In the D3 chart, we always have to look at Mars for siblings. In the D10 chart, we always have to look at Sun for status, Mercury for work. In the D7 chart, which is about children, we have to look at Jupiter, which is the karaka for children, etc. D12, we look at Sun and Moon for parents. So that's one of the other key rules, that there's certain things you look at in a Varga chart, and one of them is you look at the karaka for that Varga. There are also key houses in every Varga chart, And some of them are quite obvious, but not always. In the D4 chart, we obviously look at the 4th house because we're dealing with property and home. The D9 chart, we're looking at marriage and relationship. We look at the 7th house, but we might also look at the 9th house too, because it's it's really about good luck and good fortune and stuff like that. The D7 chart for children, we actually have to look at 2 houses, the 5th and the 9th houses. And then if you have more children, you have to look at, other houses too. But there are all these funny rules in the D7 chart, which you have to learn. The D10, obviously we look, for career and status, we always look at the 10th house. The D12, we would look at the 12th house because it's about past life karma. The D3, we look at the 3rd house. One interesting about the D3, is it's also about entrepreneurial spirit. One of the things that gets forgotten, in the D3 is a very kind of sexual house, actually. It's about primal violence and primal sexual urge, but it's also about courage and entrepreneurial spirit. So people who want to be in business for themselves, they have to have a strong D3 to have the courage to kind of get out there. So that's kind of a nice thing to look at. The D60, again, the 12th house, because it's connected to past lives again. Now there's this kind of, Vargas mathematics. It's kind of interesting. If you're not sure when you're looking at divisional houses what they're about, you can do mathematics. So divide by 12 and look at the remainder. So the D16 chart, which is about conveyances and vehicles, divided by 12, the remainder is 4. And so, the D16 chart is about conveyances. 4 times 4 is also kind of 16. So there's all kinds of nice math in the Vargas charts if you like math. The D20 chart, which is about spirituality and worship, is one of my favorites to look at when I teach my spiritual astrology class. Excuse me here. Gonna get these typos out when you find them. Divide 20 by 12, the remainder is 8, and 8th house is a meditation house. It's not just past karma. It's actually a house of 8th house is also meditation. So D20 is about spirituality and meditation. D24 chart, divide by 12, the remainder is 12. It's kind of the remainder is 12. It's also about moksha. D24 is about a higher spirituality also. So it's about moksha, but it's also we can also look at the 9th house in the D24 as being very important for whether you're going to go to college, or whether you're going to what dasha you're going to go to college in, or whether you have college in your chart. And, I get this question with teenagers and things like that. I do use the D24 quite a bit. The D30 chart, divide by 12, 30 divided by 12 is, the remainder is 6, 24, plus 6 is 30. You get the D30 chart's about health, and the D30 chart is really the mental component of health. If we have negative thinking in the D30 chart, then that creates negative health patterns. And so sometimes you can head stuff off if you see that somebody's got negative thinking in their chart in the D30, and you have to get them to kind of do some mantras to kind of get through that. Now, the D40 and the D45 chart are interesting. Next year we'll teach about ancestral karma, which is really kind of a favorite area of mine. We get so much from our ancestors. We don't, most different cultures are very aware of this. The Vedic culture is very aware of, we honor our ancestors. Our ancestors are actually there kind of, sometimes we're working out their karma in this life. And it's not even about us. Ancestral karma is quite fascinating, and we can study it in the D40 and the D45 chart. Maternal lineage is in the D40. Again, 40 by 12 is, you get a remainder of 4 for mother. 45 divided by 12 is, again, 36. You get a remainder of 9 for father. So that's how you remember those things. I The reason I'm even mentioning these kind of the math, sometimes I forget, okay, it's D40 mother or it's D45 mother, and then you quickly do the mathematical rule and you figure it. And then the D60 divided by 12, there's no remainder again, so it's the 12th house, so it's past karma. Okay. Now, I love Jaimini astrology. We'll do a little bit of Jaimini astrology in the chart. Jaimini was in the course. Jaimini was a contemporary or a devotee or Parashara's son. We're not quite sure, but you know, he was an enlightened rishi and he wrote commentaries on things that Parashara talked about and gave them a lot more detail. And Jaimini astrology is quite important, and we'll use it. And so, for those of you who know any Jaimini astrology, you can, if you're looking at the DK, which is the planet with the lowest degrees in the chart, which is the Darakaraka for spouse, you would look at it in the D9 chart because it would be important for telling you information about spouse. If you're looking the BK, which is connected to the third house of the Brachakarka for brothers or siblings, you would look at that in the D3 chart. So, we can also, those are some advanced techniques, but it's kind of interesting. We'll have a lesson on that at some point. Okay, so let's see if we can get to some more rules on Vargas. Let me Now, the interesting thing about Varga charts is, for the most part, you cannot always treat a Varga chart the way you treat other charts. And this is where people run into mistakes. They think, oh, fourth house in the D, the D7 chart, means this, but it doesn't, because sometimes the rules for each Varga chart and the houses have different meaning. And so we have to kind of learn those. And sometimes there's some logic in remembering them, and sometimes there isn't. And, so that's kind of interesting. So we can't just read, like we learn all the houses in the D1 chart. We can't just apply that same rule to the Varga charts. It doesn't work. Sometimes it will. Some Vargas it will work better than others. Many Vargas you can't. It's just nonsense if you start interpreting it that way. So that's the important thing. There's only two charts that we can analyze independently. So in the D1 chart, the D9 chart, and the D60 chart, you can read them like a normal chart without going back and forth. For the most part, when we do Varga charts, we have to go back and forth from the D1 chart to the Varga chart and see how the two interact. And the general rule is, if the Rashi chart doesn't promise something and the Varga chart does, it may not manifest. And people get excited, oh, I've got, Jupiter exalted in my Navamsha chart. Well, it's a good thing, but if there are, if you're not going to have children because, I've got like Jupiter in the 8th house and it's afflicted by K2, and I don't have any children, and I wanted children, but they're, my Rashi chart is not set up to have children. So if my Varga chart, has got children, well disposed on it, I'm not going to still manifest children if the Rashi chart doesn't promise it. So that's very important to understand, that the Rashi chart has to promise something, and then the Varga chart will tell us when it's delivered or the nature of the delivery, and give us more microscopic information. Now, this is another thing that people get wrong, and this is controversial, is that we can't usually use Parashara aspects in Varga charts. We learn, Jupiter has trines and Mars has squares and Saturn has sextiles and things like that. For the most part, and again, all my advanced teachers, for the most part, you can't use those Parashara aspects in a Varga chart. Some teachers do. There's a few exceptions we can get away with it. We can look at conjunction. So if you have the Dasha Lord conjunct Saturn or Mars or a malefic, Rahu or something, it kind of impacts it. So we can look at conjunctions in the Varga charts. Sometimes we can look at trines in the Devamsha chart, because it's, I'll teach you that rule. But for the most part, we have to use Jiminy aspects in Varga charts, and those are called Rashi Drishtis, and that's like, if you study this is, we'll go over this in the early classes. Rashi, so like the dual signs aspect each other. So Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, they all aspect each other. So if you have a planet in a Varga chart and you have something in Pisces and you have something in Sag, then there's an aspect happening in the Varga chart. So we can use Rashi Drishti in Varga charts, and what we learn about Rashi Drishti, which is kind of these Jiminy aspects, is they're more kind of, I call them anchor aspects. They're kind of stuff that we have our whole lives, and that's why they're important in Varga charts, because they're karmic tendencies that we've inherited our whole lives to work out. Parashara aspects are more connected to transits, and we study that in our transit class. So conjunctions, of course, very crucial in Varga charts. Benefic conjunctions are helpful. Malefic conjunctions cause problems, of course. And the other interesting thing is that we can use we can tell something about dashas by looking at all the divisional charts, and this is the most useful thing about divisional charts if they're rectified. And I'll show you an example from my chart how you do this. Basically, and we know this, like some people like, oh, I'm going into Jupiter period, everything's going to be wonderful. Well, and I've got Jupiter in the 9th and it's in Sagittarius, and okay. And then they go into their Jupiter period and, certain things manifest for them. But, if in the Varga charts, if Jupiter is, in the 12th house or the 8th house or the 3rd house, in a number of divisional charts, then those energies don't manifest. So, and this is why life is kind of mixed. And I've written articles about this in my books and stuff like that. Once in a while, you'll have some magical period in your life where everything works, and it does happen sometimes, but it kind of means you have to have a really good planetary placement and it's working in all the Varga charts, and then suddenly, like, life is bliss, and everything happens. But karma is karma, and it's very complicated, and very often you go into a new dasha period and your work works but you get a divorce, or money works but your health sucks the whole period, and you can see that in the Varga charts, and that's a very important to do when you're doing prediction, because people say, well, I'm going into my Jupiter period, what does it look like? Well, it's good for this, this, and this, but it's not so great for this, and so example, here's the Varga. I use north and south. I switched mostly to south after 30 years of using north, and some people like north, and I will put up charts for both. Anyway, I've got the Rashi chart in the north, and I've got the Varga charts in the south. The reason I switched to south is I can do the Jiminy aspects very easily in the South Indian, and it's and that's changed my life, and I'll show you about that. And I think I always tell my students it's good to be ambidextrous, right and left handed. So you really need to know north and south. Once in a while, you buy a book from India and it's all north or it's all south, and someone should go to a lecture and they aren't smart enough to kind of put up both charts. But so it's good to know both. So I'm in a Rahu period. I'm in a Rahu moon period. And so if we go through my Varga charts, okay, I've got Rahu in the 2nd in Sagittarius, which is not really a great sign. It's actually considered the place of debilitation for Rahu. It's in the Navamsha chart, it's in Gemini, so that kind of cancels it a little bit. But in my Drekana, which is connected to siblings, I've got Rahu in the 2nd. So in the 2nd house is an okay house to have Rahu in, and my relationships with my brothers have improved. Like in my Rahu Venus period, Rahu and Venus have a 6 relationship. My brothers and I went into joint counseling together, and we healed all our family karma, and we have good relationships now. This is the D4, the Tritamsa. What is real estate like for me in my Rahu period? I've got Rahu in the 5th with Pisces. So 5th house is a good house to have, and stuff in. It's conjunct Jupiter in its own sign. It's the sun is actually okay here in Pisces, and so it turns out, during my Rahu period, I've had just amazing support with real estate. They've been rentals, but the most amazing houses I've ever lived in, and you can see that in the Rahu period, and I can also see what's going to happen. I'm going into Rahu Mars. Mars is in the 12th. Rahu and Mars have an 8 relationship. Chances of me moving in my Rahu Mars period would seem to be strong, and we'll see how that develops. Septumsha for children, again, Rahu, I don't have any children. It's not in my natal chart either, but Rahu's in the, for the Rahu period, Rahu's in the 8th house. Again, it's not going to bring children in the 8th house. So and again, I'm 70, I'm not going to have children. So I mean, but it's also just not there in the Vargas charts. We look at the Navamsha chart by Rahu period. Rahu's in the 11th with Venus and Saturn. 11th is Rahu's exalted here. My marriage, is mixed during my Rahu period. It's got the Saturn influence, it's got the Venus influence, it's exalted, but I'm still married after 29 years. The Shamsha chart, which is career, got Rahu and Jupiter in the 7th in Aquarius. So Rahu's in its own sign. Kendra house is good. Jupiter conjunction is good. My career has been supported during the Rahu period. And Rahu moon, moon's in the 8th house here. So, maybe career has, takes a little bit of a fall during Rahu moon just because I've got 2 benefics with it. But, there's an 8, we actually have to use the Baba Suchika technique, which, my moon goes from Scorpio to Pisces. So the moon period is fine, actually. But that's why you have to kind of look at multiple things, and we have to kind of learn how to do that. And then the D12 chart, which is really past life karma, got Rahu in the 4th with Mercury and the Sun. I'm not quite sure what to make of that. I have to think about that, but it's good. So anyway, what I was trying to point out is that if you're looking at your dasha period, what's going to be problematic and what's going to be working really well. You can go through all the divisional charts and just, if the chart's rectified, and you see what's going on, okay? Okay, I think we went through this already. Maybe we didn't. D1 is the core chart, the natal chart. It has to work, otherwise, the divisional charts don't mean anything. The Hora chart, next year we'll learn that there's specialized money charts that we have to generate using other techniques. The one that the programs generate puts all the planets in Cancer, all the planets in Leo, and it's really kind of an Ayurvedic thing for the Nadi and Pingala, breathing patterns, and I never use it because it's, there are ways to use it, but I think I do teach it. But Draconic chart, again, we talked about. I think we went through this, so I don't think we need to go through this again. Okay. Now, the interesting thing about Vargas is they represent all the, we have more than a physical existence. We have an emotional body, we have a mental body, the causal body, We have an ancestral body. We have the Anandamaya Kosha represents all the karma floating around in our D60 chart. And so the different Vargas represent different worlds. In a sense, the D1 through D12 are the ones that we use most because there are people want to know about, you know, relationship and career and will I buy a house and all that kind of stuff. The D16 through the D24 are more connected to the emotional body. And we'll have to kind of see how that kind of manifests, because usually, usually the three charts that we look at there are the D16 for vehicles, although there are other ways of looking at that chart, for the emotional body. The D20 for spirituality I use a lot, and the D24 for higher education. It's really higher studies too, so higher spiritual wisdom. So it's interesting. It's connected to the emotional body, starting from the D27, the D30. Those are connected to the mental bodies, and I mentioned that you can look at the mental component of health in the D30. I don't use the D27 very much. It's connected to the nakshatras. It's kind of fascinating, and when I teach it again next year, I want to do some extra research on it. The D40 and the D45, I'm very fascinated by ancestral karma. And I actually teach a lesson on ancestral karma in connection to the D40. One of the things, by the way, when I teach these classes is they're all, we always have to know something about the rest of the material. If you're doing the D10, you have to know a lot about career in Vedic astrology charts. And so I'll give you some, I always give extra material because we can't take the Vargas out of context. If we're studying the D40 and the D45, we have to understand ancestral karma. And so I have a whole lesson on ancestral karma because, what's the point of looking at D40 and D45 if you don't even understand ancestral karma? So all of these charts kind of have background information that we have to become aware of. I mean, the D30 chart, we have to know something about Ayurvedic astrology, which I've taught. So anyway, it's quite fascinating. I always give you extra material because we need it. The D10A chart I teach in the rectification chart. It's actually very easy to do, and you can use it to rectify whether you're a boy, whether you've got the right chart for a boy or a girl. So obviously the male signs 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. Aries, Gemini, etc., Leo, Libra, Sag, and Aquarius. If those are, if those are dominating, then I'm sorry, that would indicate a male birth, and the female signs would indicate a female birth. So we use that in rectification, and that gets the chart down to the minute. There's another technique also for the D144, which I need to learn, but that also can get the chart down to another, within 20 seconds. So it's quite fascinating to, you can play with these advanced rectification tools. Okay, we talked about this already. So let's get a little bit more concrete and look at the Navamsha chart and the Dashamsha chart a little bit. So if you read my article on Navamsha, one of the things that I use Navamsha most for is looking at what talents we're born with. So if you have Jupiter in the first house in the D9, you were born to be a natural teacher, counselor, coach, or priest, and it's just an inherited thing, and you're naturally good at it. Planets in the fifth house in the D9 tell us things that we grow into kind of later in life, in our college years. The D9 things are the D9 chart. The ninth house in the D9 chart shows us something about what we need a guru to learn. Now, these are kind of interesting because when you're rectifying a chart, I had somebody and the person just had a strong background in science and biology, and we realized that we were using the wrong chart for her, because there's no way that she would have had this really innate tendency to be in the sciences unless she had Aquarius rising or something, or Saturn was in the first in the D9 chart. So we can kind of play with rectifying our talents from the D9 chart, and it's very important. The D9 chart is also really important. It kind of shows us our hidden personality. It is a chart that we can read separately by itself. We need to read it separately, after a person is married, or certainly by age 36. I mean, if you do people's charts, start talking about their natal chart, they say, oh, I used to have that when I was growing up, I got over it, and that means that you're, that's what happens. We learn, and the D1 karma that we were born with sometimes eviscerates, and but the D9 chart becomes a better chart to read, and it can be read separately, and we should read it separately sometimes. It's a very important chart. And we always look at the relationship between the D1 and the D9. So, if you're Scorpio rising and your rising sign in the Navamsha is Virgo, it actually the soul is, looking at what your inner personality is really going to be more accurate from the Navamsha chart, and it's very important to look at that. And this, the Navamsha chart tells us a lot about the soul's destiny. The 7th house in the Navamsha chart and planets in it will reveal qualities of your spouse. That's something that most people know. If you have Venus in the 7th in the Navamsha chart in dignity and Libra, Pisces, or Taurus, maybe you're attracted to exceptionally beautiful women and you manifest strong sexual relationships with them. If you have Venus in Virgo in the 7th, and then you have a henpecked critical spouse. So, you can kind of tell something about a person's spouse from the 7th house. But 7th house in the Navamsha chart is actually intercourse, it's sexual relationship. And in modern times, people don't get married, and they're they have live-in boyfriends and girlfriends, and that's a 7th house relationship. Marriage, if you take our relationship course, which is available, is often the 4th house, creating a home, and even the 12th house, having a devoted marriage to create children. So the 7th house is not the only marriage house. It's really a kind of a very sexual house, both in the Rashi and the Navamsha. The 10th house in the Navamsha chart tells us a lot about what we love to do most in our life, what we love to do in our free time, what makes, where we have kind of passion. And so put Pisces as the owner of the 10th house, or Jupiter in the 10th house, may be drawn to teaching, coaching, meditation, wisdom, and priestly duties. I have that. I'll show it to you in my chart in a minute. And so we can often use, rectify the rising sign of the D9 based on what's going on in the 10th house. And we can also even rectify the D9 chart. I think I have a lesson on this. The Vedic text even tells us that, if you have Libra rising in the D9 chart, then you'll be have whitish or fair skin, which would make sense. If you have Virgo rising in the D9 chart, you may have more kind of olive coated skin, and that kind of thing. So, they actually have skin colors for the rising signs of the D9. We'll learn that. It's kind of fascinating for rectification. The trinal house, the D9 chart will also show us kind of a lot about your life purpose. If you have, again, we always look at the trinal signs in the D9 chart, the 1, 5, and 9 chart. So if we have the fire signs, Aries, Leo, and rising, we're kind of inclined to do warrior activities, maybe be in the military, firefighting, legal defense, politics, law enforcement. If we have earth signs in the trinal houses, we're more inclined to business and merchant activity. So kind of very revealing also. And then the Atmakarika, which is the most important thing in the chart, and we teach that in Jaimini astrology, is the planet of the soul. And the soul is here to get enlightened. And the Atmakarika often creates problems. So the Atmakarika in the D9 chart shows us our soul's journey quite extensively, and what our soul desires in this lifetime and whether it manifests or not. And I have a lesson on that, or quite fascinating. Okay. I think audio, I saw the audio. So audio sometimes goes out. I apologize for that. The internet is stable, but not as stable as I would like. I should have plugged in the line. Okay. So houses in Vargas have special meaning. So, for example, in the D9 chart, we said the first 5 in the 9th houses represent our talents or talents that we learn. The second house in the D9 chart is related to a break in relationship or the nature of the second spouse. The third house is a sexual house also. The third sign says something about our sexuality. Fourth house is a health house in the D9 chart. We want benefics in the fourth house of the D9. Otherwise, we may have more health problems. So we actually can look at health in the fourth house in the D9. I mean, who knew? But that's what you need to learn. Money from work is in the 6th house from D9. Who knew? Health is also important in the 8th house in the D9. The third wife is the 9th house in the D9, and also and the we talked about luck with in our tendency for good luck and good fortune is and what will manifest is in the 10th house in the D9. 11th house, again, another sexual house, and the 12th house, luck with hospitals, doctors, retreats, and it's also an important house for looking at death. So when you're timing death and dashas of death, you actually have to look at planets in the 12th house, and very important. Only one thing. Anyway, here's my chart. I've got both north and south here. And I've got my D1 on the right, on the left, and then my D9 on the left. And so what's interesting is, I've got an interesting chart. So I'm Scorpio rising, and I'm Leo Navamsha. And so the first thing that we notice is that the rising sign moves 10 houses from Scorpio to Leo. So it suggests that a lot of my soul's propagation is around work and status, and that's very true. I mean, work is dominant for a lot of people, but the Lord of just that movement from the 1st to the 10th house automatically creates kind of that energy. Now, if we look at the 10th house in my D10, we said the 10th house kind of shows us what we're drawn, where our passion is in terms of doing work or free time. And sometimes people can't always live their passion at work. I've got Jupiter in the 10th house, and I have been involved in teaching since I was 21. I was a meditation teacher. I was a teacher of literature. I'm a financial analyst. Now it's interesting. Now Jupiter is in Taurus. Taurus is more about material wealth and material things. And if you told me I was going to end up as a financial advisor, when I was a professor of literature, I would have told you we're crazy. But it kind of happened. It's there. And I'm still kind of a counselor and coach. It's my favorite thing to do. And it's kind of right there with Jupiter in the 10th in Taurus. We can look at the 4th house for health. Now, I have health. When we look at I have health issues most of my life because I have a debilitated moon in the 1st. If you put a debilitated planet in the 1st house, you usually have health issues most of your life, and they're usually taken care of because Mars cancels out the debilitation. But in Mercury, at least I have a benefic in my 4th house, so it kind of I find solutions to health problems. I'm not chronically, I have them, but they're kind of taken care of. Anyway, so when we look at talents in my chart, we look at the 1st, 5th, and 9th houses. 1st house is Leo. So leadership, actually I've always had some leadership in my life. Even when I was 13 years old, I was made captain of the hall monitors by my grade school teacher. And I had to lead all the hall monitors in my school. So leadership's been always important. Now it's in the 12th house, which is interesting because it's about 12th house is about service. So I have this leadership in spiritual service that kind of is a dominant part of my life. It also can create, and also there's some low self-esteem issue here because Sun's in the 12th. We don't like Sun in the 12th. So in a sense, I'm a leader with not a big ego. We don't like leaders with big egos because they tend to cause problems. But I'm kind of a muted leader in a sense, and that's a talent that I have. K2 in the 5th house is exalted in Sagittarius Navamsha. It means that spirituality came out very early in my life. It was something that I had to learn, but at 18 I started learning meditation. At 21 I became a meditation teacher. You can see the K2 exalted in the 9th house is kind of, and also Jyotish. K2 K2 is the Karaka for Jyotish, and started studying Jyotish in 1987 or 1988, I think. And it was just something that I was drawn to with K2 in the 5th house, and I had a lot of luck with it, in Sag Navamsha. And then my 9th house ruler Mars is in Virgo, and I think I think that again, since we don't have any planets in the 9th house, so we have to look at where the ruler is. Mars in Virgo gives me a lot of strategic planning. We have Mars in Virgo in transit now, and Mars in Virgo is often about strategic planning. In my financial work, I'm kind of a strategic planner for people. I have a lot of warrior lifetimes as general, and I can tell you what to do. So it's something that I developed later in life from teachers, but the strategic planning came out. So that's some of the fun things in the 9th house. Now the 10th house, is something that we use a lot. The thing I look at most in the 10th house, the lore of the 10th house, the first house, the first house is always important in any Varga chart, but I often find that people will end up doing work if they have key planets in their 10th house, or the sign in the 10th house, Lord is well placed or something like that. So you can see a lot about reputation and career in the first house, and the first house ruler and planets in the first house. I usually use I usually look at the 3rd and the 8th and the 12th houses in the D10 because they're about changing jobs. And people often come to you asking about, I want to change jobs. Am I going to lose my job? My company's not doing well. When am I going to lose? When am I going to switch? I'm tired. I want to retire. So the 3rd, 8th, and the 12th houses in the D10, and if you connect them to the dashas, will tell you something about that. So there's a lot of kind of things. I have a bad boss. Look at the 9th house. 9th house is, you got a lot of malefic things going on in the 9th house. You just have karma with bosses, and you change jobs, and you can still have karma with bosses because you weren't a good boss in the last lifetime. So, there's all kinds of fun things you can do with the D10. We'll have 3 lessons on it. You can also time, here's Richard Nixon's chart. This was rectified by Mark Boney. And Nixon resigned in I think it was July of 1974, after the disgrace of Watergate. And if we look at I've got his D10 chart on the right. Again, I've got South. I use both. Just I want to get you ambidextrous, but I will put both up when we teach the class. But I just somehow the template was doing this, so I just kind of left it. We look at Nixon, kind of Leo rising, which is about leadership, of course, and he went on to become vice president and president, 2-term president. He got Lord of the First, the Sun, in the fifth house of politics. Okay, so career, and it's, you know, and it's in the Navamsha chart. It's actually Vergodama, and it's Pushkara. So it has a lot of strength, and it's a Machkaraka planet in Jami astrology. So, you know, it's conjunct Jupiter, and so, you know, there's a lot of strength for career in his chart. And we look at his career chart. He's got Jupiter in the first in Pisces. He also has Rahu in there, so we know Rahu's a crook. So he's got Jupiter in Pisces, which is strong for career. We want, you know, planet in its own sign in the first house in the Varga chart, you know, is very powerful. He have, you know, he became president. This is not an ordinary person. But he also has Rahu, so he's influenced by not being up and up. Rahu's helped by Jupiter. You know, if you remember the famous Checker speech, somebody gave him a pet dog, and you know, he was accused of some scandal, and he, you know, had this kind of very famous speech on television where he pleaded his innocence, and then he said, and yes, we did get a dog and we're not giving him back. You know, but anyway, there's something, you know, even though he ended up you know, I don't know exactly. I mean, you know, he was very kind of an enigma president, but that Jupiter, that Rahu there is kind of positively colored, you know, by Jupiter. So it's kind of like he's a good crook, you know. I don't really not a crook, you know, but kind of interesting. Got Neptune there too, kind of deluded to not really seeing who he is. But you know, if you're timing his fall, I mean, we're using regular Vimshottri dasha. We should use another dasha, but he resigned during Mercury Venus period, and in the D, you know, change of career or loss of career or changes in career, you know, happen during dashas connected to the third period, the third house or the eighth house or the 12th house. And so in the Varga chart here, we have Venus in the third house. So he went into Mercury Venus, and you know, that was it. Mercury is in the 12th house for also, so we've got a double whammy here. The 12th house is also kind of loss of career, retiring. It's with two malefics, so this Mercury is quite beat up here in the Varga chart by Saturn and Mars, and then you know, so he started having problems in his Mercury period with career, Mercury Ketu, and then come Mercury Venus, he just resigns. The sub period kind of takes him out. Okay, so you can play with. So the interesting thing is, you know, when you can time things, you know, on 3 different levels too, but you can use Varga charts to kind of time key events, and that's one of the ways that, you know, when we learn, I'll have a lesson on dashas and Vargas. We'll go into that in more detail. Okay, so what do we study in the Varga charts? Again, I said I like to make the first class a real class because, you know, so I'm going to go over a number of abstract rules, and we'll continue going over those rules in the second class, because, you know, you have to learn the rules, and then once you use the rules, you can you apply them to all the Vargas. So the first few classes, we'll learn rectification, we'll learn all the rules for the Vargas, we'll learn some of these techniques like Baba Suchikas, maybe we'll even study dashas and Vargas. We'll do a lot of the rules, the general things early, and so then as we go into the deeper Vargas, we'll, you know, be able to use all those principles. So that's kind of how the course will flow. So as we said, the first house in any Varga chart is most important. Where is the Lord place? We just saw with Richard Nixon, Jupiter in Pisces. He's, you know, he's he's destined for good things with Jupiter and Pisces, and even Rahu in the first house, you know, kind of gives somebody makes them a charismatic person. I mean, all politicians have to have a strong Rahu because they're all crooks, and they're, they all have this kind of charismatic, you know, power thing going on. You look at politicians' charts; they almost always have some Sun Rahu or Moon Rahu connection, because they're always, Donald Trump included. He's got Sun conjunct Rahu in the 10th in Taurus. So you know, you just you know, it's one of these signatures, and Richard Nixon has that Rahu signature also on the Vargas chart. Now, one of the things that we can also look at in all the Vargas charts is that we also look at the Atmakarika in all the Vargas charts. Now, the Atmakarika, if you go to my YouTube channel, there's about 60 YouTubes that I've done, and they're often these kind of preview lessons. The Atmakarika is the most important planet because it's the planet that governs our soul. And the Atmakarika wants to get us enlightened, and so it will often give us difficult soul lessons. And I think Atmakarika lessons sometimes happen our whole life. And so if you're wondering what Vargas have problems with the Atmakarika, then you see your soul lesson. So, and I don't remember, I didn't bring an example here, but let me see if I'm afraid to pull up another chart. I don't see if Nixon has. Nixon's Atmakarika is what? Planet with the highest degrees is the Atmakarika, or lowest degrees of this Rahu. So his Atmakarika is Moon, which is kind of interesting. Moon Atmakarika is often about trying to find happiness, changing relationships. And for him, actually, you know, he had a steady wife with Pat. You know, I don't know if he was happy or not. Leo's is this, you know, politicians are never quite happy, I think. It's part of the karma. So the Atmakarika here is in the 4th house, so it's not really afflicting career. So one of the things that we might look at in anybody's chart is go look at the Atmakarika, what Vargas, if the Atmakarika is in the 3rd, 6th, 8th, or the 12th house, or conjunct a lot of malefic, it means that we have soul lessons in that Varga. So that's kind of a fascinating thing. You can go through all your Vargas and see where the Atmakarika is and what your soul lessons are. I think, let's see if I remember mine. Okay, here are my main Vargas. So my Atmakarika is Saturn. So so I have Saturn. I have Saturn conjunct K2 in it's in the 10th. So I think it is afflicted by K2. So it's past life affliction for career, and it's true. I have a lot of karma around career. In my Drekina, Saturn is in the 8th house, so that's automatic past life karma, conjunct K2, which is past life anyway. You know, I have this deep karmic connection with my brother, with my younger brother. I had found out that he had killed me in a past life in friendly fire, and he wanted me in his life so that he could redeem himself for his mistake. And so there's, you know, we see there is a soul lesson with my younger brother, because Saturn, the Atmakarika, is in the 8th house. Again, I have Saturn in the 9th house in the D4. It's conjunct benefic. I don't have huge Atmakarika soul lessons in real estate, luckily, but children, well, I don't have any. I've got Saturn debilitated in the D7 chart, so the weakness is certainly not supporting children. It's in the 11th house. I desire children, but they didn't manifest. So there is some Atmakarka past life karma there just by the debilitation. So I mean, anyway, that's the point, is that we can look at the Atmakarka in all the Vargas charts to tell us what our past life soul lessons are. Okay. I'm sorry, I have to get back to where we were here. Okay. You know, we've learned Virgotama planets, which are same, are very important. They could be Virgotama in the Varga can happen. Virgotama with the Navamsa chart is very important. They show deep soul integration. So Virgotama planets are particularly strong. Same Rashi, same Navamsa, same Rashi, same Varga. They show deep soul integration, and they're a big positive. We like Virgotama planets, and we can even do Virgotama houses. So if we have Mars in the 4th house in the D1, and we have Mars in the 4th house in the D4, then there's Virgotama strength around real estate. Okay. So when we're looking at dasha lords and subperiod lords, in the Varga charts, we look for 3, 6, 8, and 12 relationships. So and I showed you some examples. So my Rahu Mars period, I think, has, I've got Rahu I've got Mars in the 12th house, and I think there's a so whenever, if we're looking at when something's going to manifest in a Varga period, we look at the sublord period and see if it's in the 3, 6, 8 or the 12th house. Another major principle: what is the connection between the D1 Lord and the Lord of the rising sign in the Varga chart? So are they friends or enemies? So yeah, I mean, that's kind of important. So if you, in all the work that we do sometimes, so if you call it Aries rising and you've got a bunch of stuff in Libra rising in the Varga charts, those guys are bitter enemies, and so that's not helpful. So you'd rather, if you have Aries rising in the D1 chart, you'd like a lot of Vargas with Sag, in particular, because they're good friends and there's a 9 relationship. So you can look at things like that. So the Lord of the rising sign of the Varga chart is called the Vargesh. Your Atmakarka, or the Lagna Lord, or Yogi planet. So they're kind of advanced things that we have to go over with examples. And I just wanted to throw some of these things out. I don't do a lot with deities in the Varga charts. There's a lot. Camille Sutton has a lot of that in her books. One of the problems is that Western people don't relate a lot to deities, and there are hundreds and hundreds of deities, and when you use deities in Varga charts, they're even more abstract. But in some cases, they're really important. In the D60 chart, the deities are everything, so we will have to look at them. But they're kind of fascinating. We have to learn how to modernize them, and they're quite fascinating. So planets in 3, 6, 8, and 12 houses block the energies of that Varga. So we don't like a lot of planets in the 3rd, 6th, 8th, or 12th house in the Varga charts, and even and then we all particularly look at the Dasha Lord. The Dasha Lord is in 3, 6, 8, or 12. Again, that part of her life won't work. So suddenly work is fine, and then we change Dasha periods, and the Dasha Lord's in the 12th house and in the D10 chart, and we find ourselves changing jobs quite often, and we're kind of like, what the hell happened? I was stable the last 16 years, and suddenly I can't keep a job. So that stuff happens, and we have different periods where we learn different things, and we can time it in the Varga charts. We can look at transits in Vargas charts too. We've got Jupiter in Gemini now, so wherever Jupiter is going in your Vargas charts, if you've got a lot of Vargas that are Gemini rising, when Jupiter is transiting in Gemini now in the Rashi chart, it will impact all the Vargas for Gemini rising. There are things you can do with that. Same thing with Saturn. Saturn's in Pisces now. If you have a lot of Pisces rising in any of the Vargas charts, then Saturn going through Pisces will impact it. And there are other ways to play with transits. We'll have a lesson on that. Okay. Rahu and Ketu show deep karma in the D charts. We always have to look at them very closely because don't forget Rahu and Ketu are very kind of karmic axis entities, and how they show up. If they show up on the 1-7 axis in a Vargas chart, you have huge karma in this life about that particular Varga. And as you know, Ketu creates lack, Rahu creates ambition. Sometimes they're not bad. Rahu in the first, if there's dignity, can be okay in a Vargas chart, but there may be there's always that karmic destiny. We just saw that with Nixon. That Rahu is helped by Jupiter in Pisces, and at the same time, he had unconscious patterns that we didn't even see that he was, not surrounding himself with good people, or there was some dishonesty in some level of his life, which we don't know what actually got proved, but because he didn't go to trial. But it's just definitely Rahu creates a lot of karma in the Vargas charts. Okay, there's a lot more that we can do. I don't want to wear you or myself out, and I know there's a thing called karmic Jyotish overload. And so I do want to, I haven't taught this course for many years. Again, the last time I taught Vargas was 2018, 2019. I will get to Varga 3. I never even got to teach some of the advanced Vargas, which we'll do this class eventually next spring. But it is this important chance. Vargas aren't taught by that many people. I think they're quite fascinating, and I think you'll enjoy them. And again, my classes are fairly inexpensive. I mean, sometimes I've taken classes with people and they charge me $1,200 or $1,600, to study for a year. And I try to make these courses really fairly reasonable for you. Often run, again, there's 16 lessons in this course, for $350. I mean, that's, quite reasonable. My classes are often, $25 a class. So I try to make them reasonable for you, and live is good. And classes are always recorded, so if you miss a class, or if you want to replay it, you always have that option. And the replays are available for life. You can download the videos. I want to go to the take questions in a minute. I want to get to the information page. Okay, here's all my contact information. I'm not on Skype anymore because Skype got taken down, but anyway, that's good. Alice, did you want to share your experience taking classes with me?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, I'd be happy to. I've been taking classes with Barry for a few years now, and I have learned so much from traditional other classes. I've taken some classes from other teachers in Vedic astrology, and they're just as good. I mean, they're good as well, but Barry has this insight, this depth and experience that just comes out of him, and he's very generous with it. It's not about, well, it's not your karma to know this. He's very generous, and I've gained so much information, and sometimes I've got to go back, of course, and relearn the material because there's a lot of information. But he's very abundant and he's very generous, and I highly recommend, if you really want to learn from Barry, you'll get more than your money's worth. It's it's priceless, really. So thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Alice. I'm going to unmute you, and hopefully, some people don't always know how to. I'm sorry, GoToWebinar isn't like Zoom. I don't like Zoom because Zoom has this kind of voyeurism quality. I know whenever I'm in Zoom and I get bored, I'm looking at people, and I think it's kind of rude. It's. I think after COVID, Zoom voyeurism was just off the charts. It's nice sometimes to see your classmates. We can do some of that on GoToWebinar if we make somebody a presenter, but um, I don't use Zoom for that reason. I use GoToWebinar, and it does a lot of things. So does anybody have any questions? You can raise your hand. You can type them in the. I'll see if I see anything in the question or the chat box. Sometimes it doesn't come through. Sometimes people need some time to think of a question. And I go through that myself. Let's see, chat. I don't see anything in questions or chat. If you go under audio and you can unmute yourself. You're unmuted, so or if you raise your hand, I can help you unmute. You can. One of the problems with GoToWebinar is sometimes if people don't know it, they have trouble kind of unmuting themselves. Let's see.
So I had a question, Barry, on the Varga charts. So is it best to use Rashi charts for those who are under 30, and then those who are over 30, or you can go into their Varga charts?
Okay, so I mentioned for the Navamsha chart specifically, which shows maturation of the soul, usually after maybe 36, or after somebody has been married, and people get married later, but they're usually married in their 30s. The Navamsha chart is more important. But that's the Navamsha chart specifically. If you're looking at the karma for somebody's career tendencies, you can use that anytime. Sometimes I get sometimes parents say, well, what is my kid drawn to? What should he study in college? I have a 16-lesson course on that, but if you're looking at you could look at the D10 chart as one of the things that you might look at.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of. I get a lot of mid-20s people asking me, about career and what they want to do. So that's good.
Yeah, the D10 is only one. I think you took the career class with me, and maybe you didn't, but I look at 16 things in career. 10th from the sun, 4th from the sun, 10th from the moon, rising sign, rising Navamsha, rising D10 Lord, planets in the D10, planets in the D, in the Navamsha 10th house. So I look at all of those, and I look for a confluence, One of the things that we learn in Vedic astrology is that you end up trying to learn, look 5 places before you give an answer, because if you just look one place, you're going to get yourself into trouble. If there's a pattern, it's going to be it's going to show up in a bunch of places. Okay. Okay. I don't know if you see a place to raise your hand or ask questions. Again, I'll look at questions again and see if they've shown up. Again, that's the only problem. Everybody's used to Zoom, and really should do promos on Zoom, but I have trouble with the videos. I don't like the way the videos get saved and distributed on Zoom. Okay. Any last call for questions? So, this is a fascinating course for those of you who are serious about being more accurate or getting depth about your own charts. I do use your charts if you choose to give me your data in class. So one of the things that does happen, most people want to learn about their chart. And in my classes, we definitely do that. I will go through your charts if you give me permission, for example. So we get to know people in our class, and we get to see how you can ask questions about your specific chart, and that definitely happens in the classes. And if you can obviously do a reading with me if you'd like, and you can ask all specific questions about your chart. But classes are quite wonderful. I love teaching Jupiter in the 10th and the Navamsha. What can I do? Can't do anything else. My favorite thing. Okay, any other last thoughts? So if you have any questions, you can email me at support@applied-vedic-astrology. The early bird registration goes another 2 weeks until the end of the month. $349. Again, it's for a 16-week class. It's about $25 a class. It's quite astoundingly inexpensive. And I do see some questions. So Jan has a question. Let's see if I can unmute you. Okay, you're self-muted, Jan, so I don't know if you can go into audio and you'll see an orange mic and turn it green. You are unmuted, so I don't know. And then Marnie has a question too. So the other possibility is you can go under questions and write the questions. Wisdom Web. Question, somebody's asking, yeah, my website's appliedvedicastrology.com. And my YouTube channel's Financial Astrology by Barry Rosen. There's about 60 YouTubes on there. Let me see if I can get Jan unmuted here. I've unmuted you, Jan. I'm so sorry about. Let me try Marnie. I'm going to unmute you also. Let's see. So Marnie, you're unmuted now, so you can ask a question, and same with Jan. So I do apologize that I really should come up with better instructions on how to. For those of you who have ChatGPT, say, how do I unmute my mic on GoToWebinar? I know how to do it, as the presenter, but I've unmuted you as the presenter, but Alice, could you check ChatGPT for me and see if how do participants unmute themselves on GoToWebinar?
Oh, let me see. I don't think I can find. I have my own ChatGPT open, but
well, it's just a matter of you can get a quick instructions. It'll just say click. See, I know how to do it. I mean, I've unmuted you both, but I don't know how. The other thing is you can type a question in chat or questions.
I think you can share screen, right? You can share the ChatGPT screen.
Yeah, we could make you a presenter if you get that screen up. I could make you a presenter.
Okay, let me get it.
Let's see. Or you could just read it. Is it real easy, or is it just?
I know. Let me see if I'm logged in. Okay. Okay. What did you want me to ask it?
How do participants unmute their microphone on GoToWebinar?
Oh, okay. Let me go ahead and share. This is a lot of information.
Oh, geez. Okay. I'm so sorry.
No,
I need to put this. I need to actually put this on the screen for everybody. I do apologize, but we have time. Let me.
maybe I can copy paste it into the message.
Okay, that'd be good.
Right.
Or into chat, right?
Yeah. Okay. Did it go?
You didn't see. Let me hit send.
Oh, okay.
The only thing is like, okay, there it is. Oh, it is a lot. Okay, it says, participants are usually muted by the default when they join. The ability to unmute depends on, okay, I've unmuted you. Attendees cannot unmute themselves freely. Only the organizer, okay, I've unmuted you. So if the organizer unmutes you, to allow, you'll see a microphone on your control panel on a toolbar that you can click to unmute. So you should be looking for an orange mic on your toolbar, and if you click on it, it'll allow you to speak. You can mute and unmute yourself anytime by clicking the microphone. Yeah, it's very simple, but for some reason people don't always see the microphone. Sometimes it's under audio settings, and sometimes it's just under
It should show up, it says go to webinar control panel. So it shows up right next to the screen normally.
yeah, I have a different version because I'm the presenter, so that's why I always have trouble guiding people. Okay, any luck, Jan or Marnie? I know Jan, you've unmuted yourself before on other presentations, so you are both okay. Okay, hold on. I'm so sorry. It's so frustrating when that doesn't work.
Okay, I think I got it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh my God. I was clicking on the microphone for so long, but then I clicked on a different button. It's under file.
I was under file. Okay, wow.
Anyway, okay.
Okay, now we know.
Anyway, after all that,
is this
all I
Jan?
wanted to, yeah, sorry. I just wanted to say it was a great class and I found it very, very, very helpful, and I'm really appreciative of your time.
Okay.
And,
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you. Is that Marnie?
yes. Yes, it's
Okay,
Marnie.
Marnie. Yeah, Jan thanked me also. I'm seeing it in the question section. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so that's very, very interesting. Okay. So again, I love teaching, and you can see that I put a lot of energy into it, and I do hope that for those of you who want to study with me, you'll contact me and sign up for the course. I do teach, there are other courses if you don't have as much background in Vedic astrology. I mean, I have courses on transits, I have courses on I have foundational courses, I have courses on dasha analysis, I have very specialized courses on Ayurvedic and health and Vedic astrology. I have courses on career, you name it, I've done it. I'm pretty versatile. We just last year completed a course on career. We've done secrets of the sun and the moon and Rahu and Ketu. So you name it, I've done it. And this is the first time I've done Vargas in a while. Okay, so thank you all for coming, and I will look forward to seeing you in the future. And have a great Sunday.
Thanks, Mary. See you.
Bye.
Bye.